Hello people, my name is Ben and this is my top 10 games of 2014. Now, some people have been saying that 2014 was a bad year for games, and while nothing mind-blowing came out, I would highly disagree with that sentiment, because we got a ton of really solid games, so much so that I really struggle narrowing down this top 10. Now, the top 10 isn't in any particular order. I very rarely do top 10s in any order because it's extremely difficult for me to say this game is far better than this game when games are so different. However, I do have a top 3 which you could see as all tied first place. They are my absolute favourite games that came out this year. But that doesn't make the rest of the list any less meaningful, and in fact I've got a ton of honourable mentions, so much so that they're actually going to get their own video. There's more than 10 of them that could have made it onto the list that I thought about, but just eventually didn't, and it was really hard to cut some of them off. But without further ado, let's get into what actually made the cut. Number 10. Mario Kart 8. Now, Mario Kart 8 is the game that pushed me into getting a Wii U, so I'd say it definitely deserves a place here. Barry almost didn't get one, because, well, it is another Mario Kart game, but it is probably my favourite Mario Kart game now, because just look at the glorious 60 FPS, that's one of the main reasons that I rendered this in 60 FPS, so you guys could see just how fantastic things like Mario Kart and the various other games on this list look in such a smooth and slick frame rate. And it's really funny that the objectively weakest of the 3 consoles in terms of horsepower is giving us some of what I think are the absolute best looking current generation games, just because Nintendo really know how to use their hardware. The game looks fantastic, it sounds amazing, the soundtrack is so good, fully orchestrated, which is what you expect from Nintendo these days, and then the tweaks to the items, the things that balance it out, have made it probably the most fair Mario Kart out of all of them. I was really amazed by the tracks on offer as well, since there's not one that I really hate, which is very rare for a Mario Kart game, and of course Nintendo were just adding to that with their fantastic DLC. The only downside to Mario Kart 8 is the battle mode, and the fact that it's shit, really. It's just awful, and all you do is race through the tracks that you are already given, while occasionally hitting one another if you see them. So yeah, not good at all. However, everything else is fantastic, including the online, which is obviously the best online Mario Kart has ever seen. I've not had any problems with it personally, and because of all that, it is my favourite Mario Kart game to date, so good job, Nintendo. Number 9. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. This I almost forgot about because it came out at the start of the year on PC. Of course, it came out last year on PS3 and 360. However, I only just got to play it this year on PC, so that's why it still makes the list. The other reasons why it makes the list, well, it's absurd and ridiculous in all the right ways, because it's a Platinum game. Platinum really don't make bad games. Well, 1 or 2, but other than that, they make amazing games, just the best character action games, and this is right up there with them. It is hilarious and absurd, from the voice acting to the monologues, which never really detract from the overall gameplay. I don't think any of the cutscenes really go on for too long, and while they are there, they're really entertaining. You can play as Raiden with a sombrero, which I did, of course, throughout the entire game, and it was fun as hell, not just because of the sombrero of course, but because the entire game is just really fun to play. It's a very aggressive game as well, because there's no blocking system, there's not really a proper dodge in there as well. You actually have to unlock the dodge, which is a 2-button combination, which is a little bit fiddly at first, but you can get used to it. But other than that, your main focus is on countering enemies and just going all out aggression on them. This combined with the system that allows you to cut them all up into tiny pieces makes for one of the most satisfying combat systems you will ever play, which is really weird considering it's mostly metal on metal, which usually feels a lot less satisfying in games like this, but Platinum managed to pull it off again, and that is why it makes the list. Number 8. Towerfall Ascension, of course, in my opinion, the best multiplayer game that came out this year, and there were a lot. Like, I mean, a lot. Especially on PC. I'm loving the trend of local multiplayer games coming to PC, people realizing that actually, yes, people do gather around a PC at times and play together. And Towerfall, out of things like Nidhogg, Samurai Gun, and various other games that came out this year, I thought was the absolute best. Primarily because of how easy it is to access and get into. The bow is such a fantastic weapon to use in a multiplayer game, especially when you're running around just trying to get whatever arrows you can find, whether they're yours that you've just misplaced, or your friends, which can really piss them off when they don't have any arrows and are forced to just try and land on your head, but if they do get it, then it's extremely satisfying for them. And of course you can make the replays into GIFs if you want. I do wish there was an option to slow down the GIF because it's very quick. But besides that, there are a ton of variants, different options that you can tweak on or off, like auto-aiming arrows, fire arrows, bomb arrows, just tons and tons of arrows. And then you've got the way loot spawns, you can change that, you can change whether everyone's flying, there's plenty of items, plenty of maps, and overall it's an incredible package for an indie game, and my favourite multiplayer one of the year. Number 7. The Wolfermungers. Now, of The Walking Dead Season 2 and The Wolfermungers, it was pretty difficult to choose which Telltale game would make the list. Not that I'm limiting myself to one per developer, but I definitely think that Wolfermungers was a more satisfying experience and did a great job of transferring the world from the graphic novel into a game using this really slick noir style that fits just perfectly with Telltale. You've got some great action scenes as well, which made some good use of QTEs, as Telltale tend to do. Then you've got plenty of interesting characters and dialogue between them. You've got a Toad who is a Cockney piece of shit, but he's kind of lovable in some ways. And all around you've just got fantastic voice acting, which is to be expected from Telltale, a really good murder mystery, some great detective segments, and an introduction to the Fables universe, which is arguably better than the comics themselves, coming from somebody who did actually go and read the first 3 volumes or so after completing the series. But I'm very excited to see what they've got in store for Season 2. And I hope they can keep up this track record that they've got going for just quality narrative experiences. They might be lacking on gameplay, but what they lack in that they make up for with decisions that feel meaningful even if they're not, and just a fantastic narrative to play through. Number 6. Transistor. Now, I absolutely love Bastion, and I wasn't sure how Supergiant were going to follow it up other than making another gorgeous looking game, which, as you can see, it is a very pretty game. But it turns out they follow it up with taking some elements of Bastion, such as the heavy use of voice acting and narration, but transfer that into an actual character, which is the Transistor, and your weapon. But then they completely change the combat system to this interesting method of pausing the action, deciding what you want to do, and then executing it with various abilities that you can combine. That was probably the most impressive thing with Transistor, was just the amount of abilities you get and the amount of different combinations that you can have, because of how each ability can be used in one of 3 ways. You can either have it as your primary form of attack, a modifier to a primary form of attack, or as a passive ability. And that was really interesting. And what was a really smart idea of how to deliver the narrative was getting you to mix and match these to actually uncover more backstory behind each character. And if you didn't do that, then you did not get the full experience. I saw plenty of people be disappointed with the story because they didn't do that. However, I did and was extremely satisfied and thought it was just beautiful, while being very ambiguous, not telling you too much, but just hinting at little possibilities. I'd highly recommend you go check out the Super Bunny Hop video when you finish playing the game for a great analysis of the content there. And of course, Supergiant deliver again on another fantastic, just 10 out of 10 soundtrack, with perfect uses of the songs at the right time, to really hit home the emotional parts of the story. Number 5. Shovel Knight. Now, I didn't expect Shovel Knight to be quite as good as it was. I was a Kickstarter backer because I thought it still looked like a great retro game, but I didn't expect it to combine all of these elements from Mario 3 to Castlevania to Mega Man and just put them all together in the best way possible. It learned all of the best lessons from the retro games while still not letting itself be confined to that era, and that's really impressive and the mark of some fantastic developers. While it's a fairly short game, everything that is there is a great display of level design at its finest, and instead of giving you tons of different power-ups to mix up the gameplay, it just had great levels with great music as well. Music by Jake Kaufman, also known as Vert, always delivers, but I think this is by far his best work yet. It also managed to surprise me with a pretty good story and some great dialogue that was actually really funny, on top of the solid gameplay mechanics that were already there. Number 4. Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. Now, I thought this was going to be in my top 3, however, if I'm being completely honest with myself, I'm just not the biggest Smash Bros. Fan. However, this is definitely the best one that I've played. It's got an incredible amount of content, and while I don't think all of it is really amazing, I don't think the classic mode is the best the series has seen, it still has possibly the most value out of any of the Wii U games on offer at the moment. You get a ton of playtime out of this, whether it's by yourself, just single player challenges and unlocking the various trophies. If you're a completionist, then this is going to take you forever. But of course you can also fight online in the most solid, working, unlike Brawl, online mode that we've seen. And then when you want to get into some multiplayer, then there's obviously the new 8-player Smash, which is ridiculous and hectic, and I love the amount of stage variation that they have. The way that you can turn any stage into Final Destination if that's your sort of thing is also really good because it at least mixes up the scenery in the Play for Glory mode. There's just so much stuff to talk about with Smash Bros. That I don't want to delve in deep into any one aspect. You guys have heard enough about Smash Bros. At this point, and you know if it's your sort of thing or not, but I personally had a ton of fun with it, and it's a fantastic fighting game that pretty much anybody can just pick up and play and just have a great time with friends. Heading into my top 3 games of 2014, number 3. Hearthstone. Now, this was in my list last year, but it was in beta, and I even mentioned how it was in beta then, but I liked it enough. Now I like it enough for it to be one of my favourite games of the year. Definitely. The amount of hours that I've put in on Hearthstone are absurd, because it's just such a fantastic game to pick up, play a few matches of, and then put down. You can do your quests for the day, get some gold, then get some packs, or get into the fantastic arena mode with that, whichever one you want. It's a great free-to-play model that doesn't feel too pay-to-win. Obviously there's some aspect of that, but when you're making a free-to-play card game, it's going to be very difficult to avoid that. But Blizzard do a great job at making you actually want to spend money because you are enjoying the game so much that you want to either give them money or you just want to get more cards. And I know I did, especially when the Goblins vs. Gnomes expansion came out just earlier this month. It's a great expansion with a ton of new things, tons of random elements to make the game not only more fun to play, but also more fun to watch. There's a good reason why it's one of the most watched games on Twitch, and that's because you experience all the highs and lows with whoever you're watching, whether it's myself, Trump, or Maz. Whoever you're watching, you experience that with them, and you can either laugh at them, you feel their pain because it might have happened to you before, but then it's hilarious when they get something amazing like RNGesus just blesses them from the heavens, and then they get an amazing card from some sort of death rattle minion. It's fantastic. While some might complain that it negatively impacts the competitive scene, it's a card game. I'm not too bothered about the competitive scene, but I am bothered about how entertaining it is just to kind of generally watch, and it's very entertaining. The developers appear to really know what they're doing with Hearthstone, and that's really apparent by not only the Naxxramas adventure, which was a ton of fun and gave anybody who got it plenty of cards to mess around with, primarily building death rattle decks though, and of course those cards synergize with some of the new Goblins vs Gnomes packs. And overall, I just absolutely adore Hearthstone, from the presentation to the music to just how easy it is to get into. If you haven't tried it out, then it's free, there's no excuse not to, and I'd highly recommend you watch some of Trump's videos to get you started. He's got a series that will teach you the basic aspects that you really should know in Hearthstone, so then you're not focused on silly things like health, which isn't nearly as important as things like board control. It's my absolutely favourite card game of all time, and I can see myself playing it for many years to come. Number 2. Shadow of Mordor. This came out of nowhere. I didn't expect anything from this game, and then I started seeing the reviews on it, and then I was like, holy shit, I actually have to get this. It looks pretty fantastic. And what do you know, it is! Not only is it a great Arkham game, but it's a great Assassin's Creed game as well. That was my main concern going into it, was that it would not only take the parkour system from Assassin's Creed, but also the combat system. But no, instead it borrows more from the Arkham games in a better way than any other game has done. In my opinion, it's actually better than the Arkham combat in a few ways. I think it's definitely easier, especially when you get further into the game and the more upgrades that you get. But that doesn't stop you from being overrun by orcs many times. And of course, when you do die, whatever orc killed you gets promoted to being a captain and possibly eventually a war chief. And it was just fantastic. And it was just great to see a AAA game actually punish you for dying, but not in a way that discouraged you from playing. If anything, it made you want to play even more, because now you actually have a nemesis to go after. You have a guy who you've got a history with, and that sort of relationship is so unique and feels great to mess around with, especially when you get the power to possess orcs and move them up the ranks and then have them betray other captains and war chiefs and then just eventually take over the entire rank. And the story was actually okay, I quite liked it. Not a great ending, but everything leading up to that was some of the most fun I've had this year. It focused on doing a lot of things that can only be done in a game and only really be done nowadays, with the complex AI, insane amounts of voice acting that are scarily specific to each situation. And then you've got one of just my absolute favourite games of the year, and I can't wait to see another one in this franchise. However, I can actually wait a few years. Please don't crank these out like Assassin's Creed games. I trust you not to, Warner Brothers. Don't fuck this up. And number 1. Bayonetta 2. Remember how I said Platinum make really good games? They make really fucking good games. Bayonetta 2 is one of the best. It is my new favourite character action game. Before that was Bayonetta 1, now it's Bayonetta 2. Not really a huge surprise. It might be coming from a lesser developer that they maybe couldn't follow up their first game, which was so fantastic as it was, but Platinum does it again and just creates one of the most consistently fun games to play. It's just so fun. It's a joy, with the smooth, almost consistent 60 FPS frame rate to just the way everything looks. Everything has a fantastic impact whenever you hit someone with the variety of weapons on offer. It feels like you actually hit them, and you can see some of Platinum's blog posts on how they've actually tweaked just the tiniest things, the tiniest little flares and flashes to give you that perfect amount of satisfaction. The soundtrack's great, the story is stupid as all hell, but it was pretty fun. And of course, on the Wii U, you can get it with the first game as well, which is also really good. If you've not played either of these and you have a Wii U, then there is no reason not to get this. So those were my top 10 games of the year. Bayonetta 2, Shadow of Mordor and Hearthstone were my absolute favourites. it hurt to cut some games like Titanfall off this list, but I'll be talking more about them in a separate video. And of course I should also have a top 10 Ben Beats games, I'll think of a better title than that hopefully, of 2014 as well. Of course Ben Beats Game was started much earlier this year by me, and I'd like to do a top 10 games that I've beaten on Ben Beats Game. I'll try to avoid putting any like reoccurring ones like Transistor. I will keep out of that list, so that will include things like, you know, Metro Last Light and Dark Souls, so games that haven't come out this year but games that I did beat for the first time on Ben Beats Game this year. So that should be very fun. I will try to get that out as soon as I possibly can, but of course I have various holiday things going on. I've still got coursework and homework, which is really holding me back, as you would expect. But I'd like to thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your amazing support this year with Ben Beats Game. That will hopefully be coming back in an update video that I'll talk more about when it's coming back and the whole situation with that. But I will still be doing streams. I'll hopefully be making more videos to do with analyzing games and such, but these things take a long time to make, so please just bear with me. Thank you so much for your support though, and if you're interested in more videos like this or whatever else I've got on my channel, then please consider subscribing, and obviously if you enjoyed, then like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, and leave your top 10 games of 2014. It doesn't have to be in an order. If you have an order, then that's great. Leave those in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys thought of this year. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.